Chapter 6, Medical Terminology, Anatomy, and Physiology of the Organ System. This is one of the more important chapters. Um, Going forward, we've already discussed in an earlier chapter about the importance of effective communication um, and things of that nature. One Another key component is to being able to communicate effectively is knowing what you're talking about, having some general knowledge about what it is that you um, that you're doing for your profession. Excuse me. I spoke earlier about in a previous chapter about how people automatically look to you as being the expert. It doesn't matter if it's your first day on the job or if you've been there for 5, 10, 30, 50 years. They look at you to be the expert, especially in the event where something is, especially if it's life threatening or any situation where they're, because you're dealing with their life. Okay, so they consider you to be the expert. Right? And that's why it's important to go to school, make sure that you learn all this stuff, as we already talked about in previous chapters, how lawsuits and things of that nature can happen and how those play out. So, what we're going to be talking about here in this chapter is, for the bulk of it, medical terminology. All right, seeing these words on paper, they can be extremely intimidating. But in this chapter, we're going to break down how to pronounce the words. And again, even after this chapter, it's not something that you're going to just be able to pick up and run with it. It's going to take time. You're going to have to spend time practicing these words. You have to make yourself some flashcards. Okay, you guys see, it was a lot of key terms for this chapter. And then this is just and then it's just this is a small slither of what most people will go through for as it pertains to anatomy and physiology. All right, we're gonna go back to we'll be going back to the basics, things that you learned on early on in school that you have tend to take for granted and you don't necessarily use anymore. We're going to be working on, again, the pronunciation of these words, breaking down the vowels, looking at the prefixes and suffixes of the word, knowing how to combine them to be able to pronounce the word. Okay, so again, you guys make sure that you do take time and practice these words, okay? Because again, people are going to be considering you, the patients are going to look at you as being experts, and you definitely don't want to go anywhere looking to get a job and then you can't pronounce the basic words. Right. After completion of this chapter, you'll be able to find medical terminology using words elements such as roots, prefixes, and suffixes. Defines words commonly used in the clinical laboratory. Describe how laboratory testing is used to assess body functions and diseases. Define the difference among the terms anatomy, physiology, and pathology. Describe the directional terms. Um, anatomy, atomic surface, um, regions, and cavities of the body. Describe the role of homeostasis in normal body functioning. Describe the purpose, function, and structural components of major body systems. Identify examples of pathologic conditions associated with each organ system. Describe the type of specimens that are analyzed in the clinical laboratory. List common diagnostic tests associated with each organ system. All right, should be able to do all of that by the end of this chapter. Right, and again, it's just like it seems like doctors and nurses and like people know a lot, but it's just really like association. You can determine, pinpoint what's going on by assessing the symptoms and knowing what things are linked to those systems, okay, and how each thing that can be linked to those systems plays a part in the overall diagnosis. Just like going back with EKG. Once you know the areas of the heart, you know what part of the heart pumps blood to which parts of the body, and what that looks like on the EKG, and if there's a problem in this area, what that'll in turn look like on the EKG. So when you see the EKG and you see that inverted U or that widened QRS complex, you should be able to associate that with a particular area of the heart. All right. All right. Medical terminology. Medical terms consist of several parts. You have your word roots, like in this case would be cardio. The prefix would be endo. The suffix would be itis. All right. Combining the vowels I, O, U, and Y, you'll be able to get um, the medical term. All right. See here. See how the words line up. All right. So you have your prefix, your root or combining vowel, and the suffix. Okay. So again, it'll just be the prefix, which is the beginning of the word, the suffix, which is the end, as you guys can see, and that root combining vowel as what's going to tie everything together. Right. Should look at B. It's endocarditis. Endo is the prefix, root, and the root word is card, and the suffix is itis. All right. Same thing with C. Phlebotomy. The root, your combining vowel, and the suffix. All right. Basic rules for combining word elements. Changing a prefix can change the entire meaning of a word. All right. And just think about like how you are about your name. If your name is spelled a certain way, you want it pronounced a certain way because you want to stand out. You want to be different. That's why your parents gave you that name. All right. It's the same thing. All right. Saying bass and bass, two of the same words, have two totally different meanings. All right. The same thing applies here when in the medical field, and it's that you definitely want to make sure that you get the words right, because again, if you say the wrong word, being that we're dealing with someone's life, that could drastically have a drastic effect on their overall well-being if they receive the wrong treatment because you pronounce the wrong word. All right. Practice. All right. The correct spelling, correct and punctuation. Combining vowel is often an O, and plurals. All right. So often, and then you'll see it says here like the combining vowel is O, like in phlebotomy, like that O is right there. Is right there in the middle. All right. Um, the plurals of the word, you have phlebotomy is drawing the blood. The phlebotomist is the person that draws the blood, and yeah, that's it. All right, make sure that you look at tables 6.1, 6.2, and 6.3. You'll see your primary prefixes, your primary roots, and your suffixes in each of those tables. All right, again, guys, please make sure that you practice these words. All right. Um, Again, while it's not something that you all are used to being held accountable for, this is major. Major. Anatomy, the study of the human body's physical structure. Physiology is the study of the body's functions and its processes. Structural levels of the human body, atoms, which is carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, iron, etc. Molecules, or chemical, constituents, genes, organelles, small structures within a cell, cells, the basic living units of all plants and animals. Right? You have your tissues, groups of smaller cells, organs, two or more tissues, organ systems, group is a group of organs, and organisms, the human body. Right? See again how there's layers to that. So you have uh, the organelles, which can be found in the cells. Now, the cells are the basic living units of all plants and animals. Okay, when a bunch of cells come together, cells form tissue. All right, so after the tissue begins to grow, it's then considered an organ. All right, um, as you put organs together, then you have organism. So the human body is made up of a bunch of different organisms. All right. So you check out table 6.5 in the book. Um, and it'll break down the it describes the components of the human cell. All right. Here's what the human cell looks like. You see your cell membrane, which is there on the outside. All right. You have your cytoplasm, which is the pink substance on the inside of here. All right. Your endoplastic reticulum. It's the little this the lines inside here. All right. Um, and your nucleus, as we know, it's the base of every cell. It's the brains of the whole operation, the nucleus. All right. All right. So let's touch on a couple more of these. You see your centrioles here. So these little things that look like probably like a sun that you would draw when you were a kid. Lysosomes here. Um, your ribosomes, which would be those little pink dots that you see on the outside of your endoplastic reticulum, and the mitochondria. Right. All right. So this is an example of some different examples of the human cells. You see, you have a fat cell, the ovary, sperm, nerve cells, bone cells, skeletal cells, blood cells. All right. Homeostasis, which means it's in its steady state. Okay. Many complex processes work independently to achieve survival. Normal functioning, energy for bodily function, metabolism, anabolism, and catabolism. All right. Um, and it can be assessed in many ways, vital signs, laboratory tests, etc. All right. So vital signs: your temperature, your pulse, your respiratory rate, your blood pressure. Right? You see, and they talk about that in table 6.6. Um, they talk about your vital signs. All right. All right. So samples collected from patients can be done um, in a variety of ways. It can be collected with a swab, it's a nasal, throat, wounds, and vaginal through a or a pack. Right. As we see now with the whole pandemic, the the go-to test now is the nasal swab. The nasal swab. Okay. Uh, if there's an open wound, you want to see if it's infected, you would swab that wound. Same thing like with same thing apply for the vaginal when doing a pap smear. Um, Another way they can be collected is through natural elimination, which would be through urine, your stool and feces, your septum, your semen, your saliva. Um, you have invasive procedures required for collection, ranges from finger sticks, which is considered minimally invasive, to venipuncture, which is moderately invasive, to minor surgery. An example of that would be a biopsy, okay, where they would just go in and like cut off a little piece of something and run tests on that. All right. All require specimen procedures, cleansing or sterilization, and proper training or certification. Again, you cannot just go in and just be like, "Oh, I'm here to do a biopsy," and you just start cutting on people or whatever the case may be. You need to make sure that you're properly trained on how to do something, right? And I want to make sure that you have a thorough understanding of how to do it, right? And that's kind of like it's kind of it's kind of a contradiction as like when we go into the lab. So I would encourage you to pick the needle up and go ahead and start sticking the arm because I want you to get. I prefer that everyone be comfortable with holding the needle, knowing how to maneuver to maneuver around with the needle. Get comfortable with that. Get all the basics down. And then once you got the basics down, once you know how you move, what works best for you, it's a lot easier to transition to actual skiing. All right. All right. Invasive procedures required for collection. Some examples include venipuncture, capillary puncture, uh, arterial puncture, tissue biopsy, CSF, bone marrow, and other body fluids. All right. All right. You have your anatomical terms. It's anterior, in front, posterior, towards the back, and your medial towards the middle. And these all should be terms that you should be familiar with now for from EKG. All right, anterior, posterior views. You got your front and your back. All right, as you can see it here, how they have everything like broken down. If you were to split a human in half, right down the middle between his eyes, so everything would look. And if you were versus if you would turn to the side, um, posterior, posterior again meaning back, anterior front, um, Make sure that the section will go between the medial clavicle. And 6-8 shows you a picture of the different body cavities. All right, so then you have your anterior, your cranial cavity, your dorsal cavity, your spinal cavity, uh, your pelvic cavity, and these will just be just different sections of the body where we will operate for like drawing samples. All right. Shit, your anterior and your posterior body regions, your nasal, your abdomen, um, pubic, your pedal, brachial. All right, and make sure that you guys go over all of this. You will see this again. All right. Uh, more anatomical terms: lateral towards the side, dorsal, which means the back side. Um, uh, Ventral, front side. All right. I just wanted to reiterate because I definitely don't want y'all to be confused on this. Um, we just talked about the we talked about dorsal, and it said the back side. I believe if you like look back at figures 6, 7, when we talked about the anterior and posterior. Okay, anterior meaning in front of. It's not necessarily the front. Okay, it's in front. Posterior towards the back. Posterior is moving towards the back. The dorsal would be the back. All right. Think about like we think about like fish. They always call that fin on their back is called the dorsal fin. Right? Meaning on the back, that's dorsal. Heading toward the back, that's posterior. Right? Again, see, I don't want y'all to be thrown off by the wording. Just make sure that you know the difference. Okay? So your proximal, near point of attachment. All right. And you have your distal, just distant, away from the point of attachment. Superficial, near the surface of the body. Deep, far from the surface of the body. Okay? Proximal, again, near the point of attachment. Where is something attached? Okay? Your distal, away from the point of attachment. Okay? So if something is attached, like your sleeve is attached to the shirt, something away from that would be like the wrist if you had on a short sleeve shirt. I mean, like a long sleeve shirt. All right. Superficial near the surface of the body. So that's like right there. So like when you open the body up, like you would see like the ribs. Superficial. Deep would be like the spine because you have to go like deep inside the body to reach the spine if that person is laying on their back. Right? Body positioning. normal anatomic position, erect standing position, arms at rest, palms forward. All right. The supine position, laying face up on back, best position for perform. This is the best position for performing phlebotomy on patients who are in bed. All right. Prone position, lying face down on the stomach. Lateral recumbent position, laying on left or right side. All right, and there you see examples of each of those. Um, and you see here that the recovery position is another term for the lateral recumbent position. Um, so if the so if you're approaching someone that who appears to be on the floor unconscious and they're laying on their stomach, first thing you want to do, you want to try to get them in the recovery position to see if that's going to help them. See if we can get anything from them in that position, and then we will ultimately go to the supine position. All right. If you think about like anytime you ever see like someone injured in sports, like if they land like face down, you will see them immediately try to get them in the recovery position before recovery position to the supine position before they even begin to move them. All right. It's critical alert. When speaking with the patient, refer to that patient's right and that person's left side. Don't just say on that side or this side. Make sure that you are direct and informative as possible when dealing with the patients. Because again, they consider you to be the experts and they don't know. They're not familiar with all the medical terminology and medical jargon. All right. And that will confuse them. Um, if you all are some of you that were here around this time last year when I was a stroke in the night class, we talked about Henrietta. We talked about Henrietta Lacks, and one of the things that was an issue with Henrietta Lacks is that they manipulated her. They played on the fact that she didn't have a great understanding of what was going on, and so that's how they were able to do have their way with her in the medical field, so to speak. Right? Um, right. So do not confuse your own right and left side with the patient's right or left side. Okay. So again, just make sure that you use a proper terminology, the region, know the location, um, be direct with them as you possibly can, so they know exactly what it is that you're talking about, what's going to be done. Again, we talked about building that rapport, creating that sense of security. That's going to make the job a lot easier. They're not going to be as timid. Um, that makes them easier to work with. Research shows that when a patient is more relaxed and not stressed out or worried about the procedure that they're having done, their results and recovery time almost triples. All right, so again, that's why it's important to make sure that we communicate with them. Should we build that rapport? Share those stories with them. I mentioned that before, so that you can build that rapport to establish that safe haven for them, and that'll make them more cooperative with you. All right. See here on 610, talking about um, the organ system of the body, all right, and their functions. So you guys make sure that you look at that. And we talk about the skeletal system, the endocrine system, the cardiovascular system, and all of that. And we're going to touch on each of these Right. So the major organ systems, disorders, pathologic, pathologic conditions of the mind or the body. Right. So you think you have some. It's about when you think about when you hear someone say they have a mental disorder, see, of the mind, um, a physical disorder, naturally of the body. Right. A disease, specific, measurable condition with clinical systems, the patient history, laboratory, and radiology results. Like, all of these things must be present before something can be deemed a disease. All right? Illness must be subjective, non measurable, departure from wellness, pain, suffering, distress, etc. All right? All these things are associated with an illness. All right. Then you see table 6-9, where they talk about the the functions of the organ system. All right, role of the clinical laboratory in assessing body functions. You have your screening, your diagnosis, your treatment, and your monitoring of the health. All right. Um, right. So now we're getting into the integumentary system. Right, it consists of the skin, hair, sweat, oil glands, teeth, and fingernails. Serves for protection, regulatory functions such as insulation, thermal regulation, excretion, and production of vitamin D. All right. So while it's great that the trend is for everyone to be hairless in every sense of the word. There should be no hair on your body if it's not on your head or your eyelashes and eyebrows and things of that nature. All right. But the hair is there to serve a purpose. You need the hair. If waxing wasn't a thing, STDs would be non existent. All right. So here you see an example of what the skin looks like. Um, all the components. All right, the same with the fingernail. All right, skin is the largest organ of the body. All right, protects deep tissues, provides barrier to microorganisms and foreign bodies, protect tissues from hazardous exposure, prevents water loss, and allows for uh, perspiration, stores fat next to tissue. Right? And this goes back to the whole thing of uh, the thermal regulation. Having fats keeps you warmer. A person that has a higher more body fat will be warmer than someone that has less body fat. Like, that's self-explanatory. Um, right. It allows sensations like touch, temperature, pain, pressure. Right? Your sebation glands produce oil for hair, skin protection. All right. Now, the more melanin you have, the more the more oil, um, the more oils your body is going to produce um, for the skin and the hair to be protected. All right. So yeah. Sweat glands produce perspiration to cool the body. I remember back when I was in school, like one of my teachers, like she would always tell us that, so she used to tell us that only boys sweat, girls perspire. Because that sounds, perspiring sounds more ladylike than sweating. Because ladies shouldn't sweat. But it's actually the same thing. And as a kid, you thought like that was cool. Like when you find out, as you find out the difference between boys and girls, like to say that girls perspire, like yeah. Anyway, maybe it was just me. Whatever. But it's actually the same thing. And as I grew older and learned more, it's like, man, she pulled a fast one on me. All right. Some disorders that can happen in the integumentary system. You have a bacterial infection, which is acne or impetigo, um, decubitus ulcers, viral infections, which is fever blisters or cold sores. You have rube- rubella, rubella, chickenpox, herpes, zoosters, zosters, or the shingles. All right. I'm pretty sure you all probably have seen that commercial now, or they talk about the shingles virus. Say if you had chickenpox, shingles is already in your body from chickenpox. So weird because I remember having chickenpox like as a kid, and it's not something that you hear a lot about anymore. It's like a rite of passage as a kid to get chickenpox. Now you have 42 strands of flu. But, you know, things change. Fungal infections, swing worms, or athlete's foot, allergic reaction, uh, dermatinitis, eczema, psoriasis, insect bites, burns, skin cancers, there's malignant melanoma. All right, here you see um, what each of these different diseases look like on the skin. All right, so you have here tests to test um, type of test used to check to test on the skin, skin scrapings or biopsy specimens, um, bacteriologic, viral, or fungal cultures, potassium hydroxide preparations, biopsy staining procedures. All right. Now we're getting into the skeletal system. We have your bones, cartilage, joints, ligaments, tendons. All right. Here is see the different ranges of movements and the terminology associated with them. Alright, so just skeletal system looks like. So your different bones. Right, the skeletal system serves the body in five major ways. It supports protection for softer tissue, which your brain and your lungs. You know your brain is located inside your skull. Your lungs are located beneath your rib cage, provides you with movement and leverage. Then you have your hematopoiesis, your blood cell, and for blood cell formation in the bone marrow. All right, I'm gonna break this one down for y'all because I said that one kind of fast. Hemo, topa, meiosis. All right. So your prefix, your root word, and your suffix. All right. Mineral storage, calcium. All right. As we know, uh, calcium, sodium, all these are minerals. These things can be found in nature. Minerals. You know, we come from the earth. So what's in the earth can be found in us. All right. Um, the skeletal system is responsible for storing all these minerals in your body to provide you with what you need. Right? As you know, calcium makes the bone strong. Right? Types of bones based on shape. You have long bone. Your long bones. You have your leg, your femur, tibula, and fibula. So femur, tibula, and fibula. All right. Your arm and hand. You have your humerus, your radius, your unula, and your phalanges. All right, phalanges are your fingers. Um, short, uh, short bones are your carpals, your wrist, and your tarsals, ankle. All those are called carpals. All right, flat bones are severe cranial bones, ribs, scapula, irregular cranial bones. All right, then you have your um, phenoid. All right, the S is pretty much silent on here. Then you have your epi, epionoid, your vertebrae column. All right, so your vertebrae, your sacrum, and your coccyx, connected to each other by a variety of joints that permit many movements. All right, structure differs between male and female skeleton. Consists of several layers. All right. Disorders associated with the skeletal system. An inflammatory condition would be osteoarthritis, um, bursitis, gout. A bacterial infection is osteomyelitis. A porous bone condition would be osteoporosis. All right. Again, with this, break it down. O is that valve that's separating them. Pro, O, us. All right. You also have fractures, developmental conditions where the bones won't develop or underdevelop, giantism and dwarfism. While these are disorders with the bone, this also can be credited to genetics. Um, we'll take Shaq for instance. Like Shaq mom is really short. His dad wasn't that tall, and then Shaq comes out to be 7'4". It's like they don't know what happened. To their knowledge, no one in their family had ever been that tall. But based on genetics, something that you should learn, probably learn somewhere around like fourth or fifth grade. We did that thing called the Punnett Square, where you break down how genetics can be passed along through certain traits can be passed on through genetics, because it could skip like multiple generations and then just show up like all of a sudden. All right. um, and people tend to over overlook that. Nowadays it's automatically just, it's a like worst case scenario. With as short as I am, if I decide when I get married, if I have another kid and my kid's like 7'6", worst case scenario, I probably think that, hey, my significant other probably stepped out on me if I thought the way others did. But I'm a rational person. I would take the genetics into account. I wouldn't just assume the worst. All right. But anyway, you have scoliosis, which is a curvature in the spine. You have rickets and tumors. All right. You see different disorders associated with the bone here. Uh, See osteoarthritis in the first one, gout in the finger, and then you see a open fracture of the wrist in C. And there are different types of fractures too. We're not going to get into those, but just want to bring that to your attention. Um, Laboratory tests for skeletal systems. You have your serum calcium, phosphate levels, um, uric acid, vitamin D, alkaline phosphates levels, anti-nuclear antibodies, uh, urolite sedimentation rate, complete blood cell count, microbial cultures of blood, bone marrow, and saliva fluid, microscopic cytogenetic analysis. Right, all these things. Again, these are all tests that can be done on a clinical level for to determine if something is wrong in the skeletal system. All right. See here, the three types of muscles. See your skeletal, your cardiac, and your smooth muscles. And we're transitioning to the muscle system. See again the different types. You have your skeletal, which is attached to the bone. And then you have your visceral, which is lining the walls of internal structures such as your veins and arteries, and your cardiac, these muscles associated with the heart. Right. Uh, Purpose of the muscular system will help assist with movement, maintaining posture, uh, produce heat. Uh, Glycerin is stored glucose in muscles. Glycerin is stored glucose in muscles. Right. And you see the muscular system, how the muscle looks as it's attached to the bones. All right. So you have muscular dystrophy, um, multiple scleritis. You have amyotrophic lateral scoliosis, not scoliosis, sclerosis, which is muscle cramps, tendonitis, accidents, muscle atrophy due to inactivity, um, viral infections, poliomyelitis, Most of these also affect the nervous system. Right? Um, Laboratory tests for the muscular system, muscular enzymes, such as heart enzymes, analysis of autoimmune antibodies, antinuclear antibodies, microscopic examination, culturing of biopsy tissues. All right, and we're gonna put a pin in it right there.